Alright, hi everyone, this is Ben Beals here with Arborist Now. We're down at our shop in Oyster Point doing some basic chainsaw maintenance this morning. This is our 261 steel, and this is a very vital part of our operation. It's a medium-sized chainsaw, great for doing groundwork, and it's also great for medium-sized work when you're elevated, actually climbing in the tree. We're just doing some basic stuff this morning as far as a regular look through on the chainsaw. We're looking at all the components of the chainsaw, making that there's no bolts are loose. We're making sure that everything is tight as far as it should be. That we've already removed the bar, we've taken the chain off, we've taken the cover for the bar off, and also we've already taken the cover that holds the back of the air filter together. So that's the first thing that we're going to be addressing this morning. A simple removal of the air filter. Do a quick look, make sure that there's no holes, make sure that there's no damage, make sure that the interior part, because this is the actual air intake for the carburetor, is also clean and there's no debris. Something like this, a quick air compressor and the air filter, that's pretty much all you have to do to make sure that that's going to not be a problem for you. And it's just a simple counterclockwise off to reinsert that. This is our cover, so we can go ahead and put the cover back for the actual cover for the filter. That's also a nice thing to have already done and finished. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at making sure that the bar itself is in good shape. First thing we're going to do is we're making sure our sprocket here at the very front is turning. There's no irregularities with it. All the teeth are not worn down. The sprocket is in good shape. As you can see, it's turning very nicely, and so that's something you need to really always make sure. Next thing we're going to look at is making sure that there's no debris as far as the top side of the bar on this side, and also this side as well. You don't want any buildup, something like that. That's going to be a big problem. And the next thing too, you want to make sure that there's no debris on the edge of the bar as far as the sides. Both sides of the bar need to make sure that you're very clean. There's no buildup. Things like that can become a big problem as far as the regular maintenance of a bar on a chainsaw. And the next step, which is probably the most important for the bar itself, is that there's a very small oil port where this is the moment where the oil actually enters the grooves into the chainsaw. And so this is something that we want to make sure that this is nice and clear. If there's even a small amount of debris, this can cause the oil not to flow into the grooves in the chainsaw, and you will not be lubricating the chain, which will cause a lot of problems, heat, wear, a lot of damage. So that's something that's really important. The next thing that we definitely want to make sure that we're doing is we're using our tool here. This is something that you use to put into the groove of the chainsaw where the guides go. This is something where you're going to clean out debris. So we just pulled some out right there on the ground. This is just a quick and easy step to make sure that you're going to be able to lubricate the chain in the chainsaw when it's moving. If there is debris in either side of this bar, you're not going to be able to move the oil. Chainsaw is going to get too hot. It's not going to run properly. So this is something that takes literally a couple times on either side, and then you're done. You're cleaning that up. So on to the next stage of things. We have the cover for the actual bar cover itself. You're going to get a lot of debris and material that's going to build up in here over time. It's in pretty good shape. Make sure you're scraping out any debris that's in here, excess debris, just extra weight, and also it can get too hot. It can actually melt some of the plastic. Hit it with the air compressor, something like that's a really good thing to have done. Pretty much the next stage after that, we're going to go ahead, do a basic look at the front of the bar, make sure that the dogs are all in good shape. We've got our metal here in the front. The bolts for the chainsaw itself are in good shape, so that means we're going to be able to reinstall the chain onto the chainsaw itself. So once we have our bench here, we pretty much are going to be able to go ahead, lay this in, make sure that the grooves are all nice and straight. From this moment, pretty much, you're going to be able to have the chain on the chainsaw itself, and then once you get that point done, you're going to be able to just pretty much slide the sprocket right back onto the chain. Now that we've already done it, the chain's already loose enough so that you can pretty much have it sitting at this point where you're not going to have to worry about how to pretty much get it back in. Once you get that cover on, you'll be able to then reinstall this scabbard for the chainsaw itself, and then at that point, you'll be able to tighten up some of these bolts, and then once that is completed, you're going to be able to go ahead and tighten up the rest of the chainsaw. So some basic maintenance as far as that goes. We've done the air filter, we've checked the bar, we've cleaned the bar, we've cleaned the cover for the chainsaw as well. We've made sure that the chain is good and sharp, and also made sure that the oil port on the bar itself is also fair and clear. So things like that are a basic maintenance that we do pretty much almost daily on all of our chainsaws, and it's something that really makes the longevity and the life of the saw really last, and make sure that when we're operating in the field that things are up to par and we have good working equipment, so that we're always going to be able to do the best job possible. So, all right, so we're doing the next important section of the chainsaw maintenance. So we've already looked at the chainsaw, we've made sure all the parts are clean and working. Now we're going to look at the tension actually of the chain with the bar. This is something that needs to be checked very consistently as far as once you're running the chainsaw and things are actually being worked. The chain will expand when you're running it, once it gets hot. So the tension of the chain itself to the bar is something that really needs to be looked at pretty much constantly throughout when you're working with the chainsaw at any time. The bolts are slightly loosened so that the cover is taut, but then you're still able to use the adjustment screw of the chainsaw itself. You can actually see the chainsaw loosening and tightening, and there is about a certain amount of tension that you want to attain. Once you tighten the chainsaw to a certain amount, the amount of space that you have they can release from the bar is really important. This is just a hair bit too loose. Once you do a couple more turns and you get the chain just about to the point where you're able to still run the chain through the bar, but then you don't have the ability to pull it out. When you have the teeth actual sit in the bar itself, this is something that you need to make sure that you cannot release them fully. And so once you have the tension properly on the chain itself, then you finish the tightening of the actual cover so that the movement of the bar is then limited to the point where you are then able to completely have a nice sharp chain, and also the tension in which you're still able to move the chain itself. And since we cleaned the grooves like we did in the earlier video, if you don't clean the grooves itself, you might have a lot of friction, you might have a lot of wear here, you might have some things that would limit the debris inside of the actual grooves of the bar, so that the movement here is actually more difficult than it should be. This is just exactly perfect the way we'd like it to be. It's nice and tight, the bar is moving, and it's very taut. You don't want to make sure that the bar stays, the chain is too loose on the bar, because that can cause a lot of problems. It can derail from the bar itself, and also it can damage the interior sprocket on the inside here. This is definitely something that we want to make sure we're always looking at. Alright, so we're outside now, our shop here in Oyster Point, Arborist now. We've got our chainsaw pretty much put all back together. We've got the air filter cleaned up. Like we said, we cleaned the bar, we cleaned the cover for the chainsaw, and the last step that we did was we made sure that all the tension is proper on the bar itself with the chain. So now that that's all done, I'm now wearing a helmet. This is extremely important. So we've got eye protection on the helmet, and we also have our ear protection. So before you start the chainsaw at any time, both of these should be worn at all times. Something that we have to practice and really make sure that it's happening. So now once that's done, we're just about ready to start the chainsaw. The choke is here on the side, so you're going to put the choke lever down so that this is a cold chainsaw once it starts. Pretty much put it between your legs, brace the chain. Without running it, make sure that the chain brake is on. This is something that when the chain is actually moving, if you set the brake, then you're not able to move the chain. So anytime that you're moving a chain or moving the chainsaw, this is something you have to make sure that's happening. Once it starts, 1, 2 pull. Warmed up now. You're going to be able to just let it idle for a little bit, making sure that the chain brake is on. The chainsaw maybe take 20-30 seconds to warm up. Once the motor's warmed up, it's running now. Once the chainsaw is a little bit warm, you want to make sure that your chain tension is still properly done. This is just about perfect, so we're ready to go to work now.